It's time for Parts in the Sum of the Whole. A weekly podcast designed to inform the masses on just about any topic you can think of. We always encourage your comments, so drop us a line. And now, from our world headquarters in Bidwell, Ohio, here's the philosopher monk, Ronnie Glenn, and the Vance man, Brian Vance.
Hey! Oh my goodness sakes! Look at all
man!
This. Wow!
Well,
Thank you.
People, how the hell did they get in here? Didn't you lock the door?
I believe someone remodeled while we were gone. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is our new studio audience, our new studio. They've done some remodeling here at Parts in the Sum of the Whole podcast, and, well, it's good to be here. Those listening can't see it, obviously, but welcome to those here in the studio audience as well.
We got redesigns all over the place this week.
I think that lady in the red shirt in the front row might attack you, though, at some point in the show. So
well, you know, that's why I have Jose over here. He's my bodyguard.
Okay. Well, welcome. It's summertime, and the living is easy, is what the song says, right? Summertime and the living's easy.
Well, I sure hope it is.
Well, actually, the summer solstice was Friday.
Yep, 21st. First day of summer.
And this is our official summertime show. We're going to highlight, I guess, songs of summer throughout the entire show today, in and out of our commercial breaks and different things like that. You may hear some tunes that you know, past and present. But I was kind of thinking, Ronnie, what songs remind you of summer? Usually there's songs that remind you of different things. What song reminds you of summer if you could just choose one?
Hanging Tough. New Kids on the Block.
Hanging Tough reminds you of summer, and now explain.
New Kids on the Block were out when I was in the second half of grade school, like 5th, 6th grade.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the pool, like every day during the summer. That's what you did. I can still hear it in my head. The radio station that they played was a pop station, and it blared over those outdoor bullhorn kind of speakers.
Okay, yeah.
So it sounded terrible, but, you know, it was loud. But, yeah, New Kids on the Block, man.
So is this a song that you would hear while you were swimming in the summertime related to that? Of course, LFO, which you're going to be hearing on the show in a little snippet here in a little bit, had a song with New Kids on the Block, had a lot of hits, talking about their summertime song.
Yeah.
So
that was my generation.
So they thought it was worthy enough to be in their song. So
yeah.
You're right. Now, what would my song of summer be? I would say, it's hard for me to narrow it down. I'm a big Chicago and Journey fan, so I would have to say Saturday in the Park by Chicago, and the number one would be Journey's Stone in Love. Well, yeah, it's like those summer nights I still remember from my youth.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a good song. I mean, Journey is cool, Chicago's cool.
Summertime song. Okay.
But it seems like your songs come from your your teenage years, and my songs come from mine.
They always will. So for those listening, and those of you here in the studio audience as well, let us know what your favorite summertime song is, and leave it on a comment on our Parts in the Sum page. Speaking of which, it is totally revamped. It is redesigned, just like our studio here. We've remodeled the web portion of our program.
I think we set it up a whole lot better. You'll be able to access our podcast directly from our page now.
You don't have to download them anymore.
No.
Just click
stream them
play.
Right, and you could stream them on your phone if you're out in mobile.
Now that's going to be a great addition.
We're going to put our news archives up. We've got the Daily News Wire went up this week after being postponed for the first 2 days.
And I like those, by the way. Those are very good. You do a lot of hard work on that.
Like I said last week, I only post to our Facebook page and stuff like that just a few of the articles that I get every day. Mm-hmm. And the Daily News Wire is the catalog of all of the articles that I pulled that day. And I hope it helps people out. I got it in categories so you can scroll down to something you're interested in. It's divided into things like politics and foreign affairs and the economy and the environment and odds and ends.
Just a little
stuff
bit
like
of
that.
Everything. Yeah. I just love the design of the page. You did an excellent job. And, folks, it was all him. It was all him.
Expect it to be up every day around by about 3 o'clock. It takes a little bit for me to go through the articles. By the time some of you people get home from work in the evenings and whatnot, you go right to our site, you get home and see all the news that we think you should know. That you might not get from anybody else.
The context you need to know.
We try to explain them, too.
Now, you know what? Here, I want to step out and talk about a couple of shows that we're big fans of. Jon Stewart's Daily Show and also Stephen Colbert's The Colbert Report.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say, offer our condolences to Stephen for the loss of his mother.
He had a beautiful eulogy.
Yes, at the beginning of his show the other day, yes.
It's in I think it's in the first Daily News Wire that I made. There's a link to the video so you could watch it. He opened his show with it, and it was moving. And you could tell he really, really liked his mom, and he said beautiful things about her. Explains how most people feel when somebody like that leaves, you know. They leave, and one door shuts, and it just makes the people still in the room realize how empty it is. I hope they keep up the little bit that they've been running when John Oliver says that Jon Stewart's gone, and they make up these little different funny excuses for why he's gone. I hope they keep that up the whole time he's gone, because those are hilarious.
I think you can count on that.
I think the last one I saw was that John was currently in Paris on an Eat, Pray, Love kind of tour.
Yes. Now, the other day he had former NBC News nightly news anchor Tom Brokaw. Of course, he's a special correspondent for NBC News now, just a staple of NBC News.
Oh, absolutely. Highly respected.
On the show. And he was talking, we're talking about how we're trying to provide parts
information
and stuff in context and
easy
how
ways you can get it. We have the podcast. We have the things. You would try to make context. We write commentaries and opinions, because you got to try all the different ways that you might be able to get information out to the people, especially in this day and age when information is coming at you constantly from all sides.
Right, and he mentioned that, and here's his take on how information and the gathering of it and delivering of it has changed.
I loved his interview.
There is something kind of useful, and there's an adaptation going on that younger audiences and younger users of this technology are able to sort out better than people my age, and we're still trying to adapt to it. It's now, for most of the young people in this audience, it's routine for them to get some information from Twitter or from Facebook or from the other places. Question is, how much does it hold up? And how much of it is just flying by you and doesn't give you the context that you need?
All right, and I'm a big Tom Brokaw fan.
Yeah.
To begin with, I've got an autographed picture, and I had a chance to actually meet him over in the Gulf War when he was doing nightly news. President Bush, 41, was visiting during Thanksgiving the troops in 1990, and he was there doing nightly news that night, and I had a chance to meet him. Really nice guy. All right, well, we want to promote our new phone number. This is for anybody around the world that want to get a hold of us.
We actually got, a word kind of number.
Yes, it's
awesome.
We were trying to get this, and we got it. It is area code 415 PSW News. So that would be 415-779-6397. You can call that anywhere. Of course, toll charges apply, but
most cell phones, at least nowadays, have free long distance. Long distance is a slowly declining and barely relevant charge anymore because most phone services come with unlimited. So
it is easy to remember. We'll be
415 PSW News.
Ronnie, coming up a little bit later on in the show, of course, we have our trivia question.
It's a good one this week.
It is a very good one, and unless you're a walking human computer like yourself, they may have to look up this answer. But your chance to win a Facebook gift card this week. It's the quick and easy way to buy items in your favorite games and apps on Facebook. And a lot of people into that. Candy Crush people.
We need to announce that we've modified the way the contest works a little bit now because we realized that not everybody would listen to our podcast, right when we released it, and anybody who did had a little bit of a substantial advantage over it. So we are going to give 24 hours before we start accepting the answers. So we release the podcast Sunday evening, and you'll have to wait till 6 o'clock Monday evening to be able to submit your answer. Just to give everybody a fair chance.
Just make it fair for everyone. Hey, I'll tell you what, Ronnie, when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've had several deaths this week that we want to mention.
Oh, yeah.
And also a tragic accident the other day in Dayton, Ohio. Those stories are coming up on our summertime edition of Parts in the Sum of the Whole. Stick around.
The inside, outside, you also and down the meaning way. Inside, outside, everybody's got serving USA.
Lay back, cause it's summertime.
Hi, I'm Ryan Seacrest for RAD. Over 300 people in this country are killed every week by a drunk driver. That's the equivalent of 2 747 plane crashes every single week. And the problem isn't going away unless we all do our part to stop it. So if you see someone who's about to drive after drinking, get the keys. Don't leave it up to anyone else. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service announcement brought to you by RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Well, welcome back to the show, and I'm Brian Vance along with Ronnie Glenn. It's Parts in the Sum of the Whole. We just went over our 1 month anniversary, I think, Ronnie.
That's right. This is week 5.
I am so excited. Just like
You
the Pointer
asked me-
Sisters.
On the second one, if I was excited that we had one podcast down, back then I said I was surprised that we had got that first one done. But we've done 3 more since then.
I think, quite honestly, we're getting better with each show, but, you know...
Yeah, well, I hope we are.
Yeah.
If we aren't, I would hope people would tell us.
Yeah, and I hope people tell us if we're doing a good job or if we suck.
We always like compliments.
Yes.
You'll be banned from the site for criticism. I'm just kidding.
Flattery will get you everywhere. With me. Well, some sad news this past week, but yesterday, tragic accident at the Dayton, Ohio Air Show.
Oh.
Now, the Dayton, Ohio Air Show has been going on. It's actually one of the country's oldest air shows, and it usually draws around 70,000 people and has probably about a $3.2 million effect on the local economy there in Dayton. Of course, Ohio being the birthplace of aviation.
Well, that's right, or near Wright-Patterson.
Yeah. This year, due to federal budget cuts, the Air Force Thunderbirds and other military participants pulled out of the air show, so they had a smaller crowd. But there was a terrible, terrible accident yesterday at the air show. A plane carrying a wing walker crashed yesterday and killed the pilot and the stunt walker instantly.
It was one of those old biplanes.
One of the little biplanes, and she was, actually, her name was Jane Wicker.
It takes a lot of guts to be a wing walker.
It does. Now, Jane's Facebook page confirmed that she was killed in the accident, but it also says how she got started. She responded to a classified ad, Ronnie, from the Flying Circus Air Show in Virginia in 1990 for a wing-walking position, thinking it would be fun. Now, her full-time job was actually a budget analyst for the Federal Aviation Administration.
Wow, that's quite a difference.
Before the air show this week, she did an interview with the local WDTN television station, and she said that her signature move was hanging underneath the plane's wing by her feet and sitting on the bottom of the airplane while it's upside down. And she said, "I'm never nervous or scared because I do know everything will be just fine."
Wasn't that what she was doing when it came down?
Yes,
that move?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she said she had never had any close calls, and yesterday was the close call that unfortunately ended her life.
I hate the term near miss, but it would have been better if that would have happened in this circumstance.
I wish it could have been a whole lot different. Actually, the Dayton Air Show has seen its bit of tragedy before. In 2007, veteran stunt pilot Jim Leroy was killed when his biplane crashed and burned there.
Well, they try to be, exciting, and maybe the sequestration strikes again, and because the military aircraft couldn't be there, then the civilian ones that were trying to step it up a notch to compensate for all the excitement,
Right. You would think they would probably do that, but increase the excitement.
You shouldn't... I'm sure they didn't consider it a stupid risk because she had done this move plenty of times before, and like you said, never had a problem with it, I'm sure the pilot, was very competent and skilled. It's just... it
so
looked,
happens.
if you watch the video, it looked like maybe a wind gust knocked this plane sideways and he just lost control and it went...
One other thing I wanted to mention is the local television station there in Dayton interviewed an aviation photographer and licensed pilot from Findlay, Ohio, who was there. He's 20-year-old Ian Hoyt, and he said that he was taking photos and it appeared that the plane stalled and didn't have enough airspeed. And he credited the pilot for steering clear of the spectators and potentially saving lives in that aspect. So,
for those of you who don't know, stalling is when the aircraft is no longer producing enough power to keep the plane in flight.
Our thoughts and prayers going out to them and their families. James Gandolfini passed away, the Emmy-winning actor who swaggered his way to fame as the murderous, clinically depressed mob boss, HBO's groundbreaking drama The Sopranos. He passed away this past Wednesday on vacation in Rome.
No, I never watched that show. I've seen him in a couple of movies, and he was excellent in them. I've always enjoyed the clips from The Sopranos when he's with his therapist.
Yeah.
I always liked their interaction, but I never watched the show myself.
In any role he played, he was a very good actor indeed. We lost him at a very young age. He was only 51 years old. The cause was a heart attack or stroke, HBO officials said. The Sopranos, recently named the best TV show of all time by the Writers Guild of America, and it ran on HBO from 1999 to 2007. And I guess beginning tomorrow, on Monday, Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey going to be ordering all state flags at half-staff in honor of his death and his life.
Yeah, I understand that's a bit of a controversial thing in New Jersey, but it's a sign of respect, if nothing else, for somebody who died.
Not everybody gets that treatment, but...
Well, maybe it's because of this. Our friends over at Democracy Now!, when they were telling the story that they told announcing his death, they told things that the general public might not have been aware of that he did. He was a big advocate for injured veterans, and he directed it and starred in and produced these charity documentaries to help raise money and awareness and stuff like that. He had this whole humanitarian side to what he was doing.
Right, it was a tough guy on the outside, but a big teddy bear on the inside.
Everybody he worked with in those charities say that him being gone puts a recognizable hole in how they operate because he was so passionate and wanted to help so much. He bought a whole class of like 8th graders movie cameras so that they could express their art. It was a low-income, impoverished school like in the inner city or whatever, and he personally bought them equipment so that they would have the chance to express and follow their artistic interests. You got to love a guy like that, and I could see why that would leave a big hole in all those people he tried to help.
Well, James Gandolfini passing away at age 51, and I guess we can raise our glasses to him and say, rest in peace, my friend, and salute. Another tragic death this week comes from Chicago, and Bernie Sahlins, the co-founder and former owner of Second City.
I love Second City.
A crucial and essential innovator in the field of American comedy, passed away peacefully Sunday. He was 90 years old, but played a big part in the influence on growth and innovation in sketch comedy.
Right. A lot of the first stars of Saturday Night Live, when it exploded in the late 70s and stuff, they came from Second City. You know, it was a comedy.
Well, I guess I read somewhere, too, where he was jealous of Lorne Michaels because he was stealing all of his talent.
Oh, I could see that, you know. We're going to be talking to somebody from Second City later on this summer, aren't we?
Yes, here in a few weeks. Eric Harrison, the native of Gallia County and Gallipolis here, who's in the Chicago area doing stand-up and just a lot of different things in the Second City crowd. He is the roommate of Richard Pryor Jr. Hopefully we'll be able to sit down with both of those gentlemen within the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned.
You know, the emails we exchanged seem pretty positive.
Our thoughts and prayers going out to the family and friends of Bernie Sahlins. And then the third death this week
is the most controversial one.
I'm thinking it is.
Yeah, it seems a little
convinced.
sketchy.
And we're talking, of course, about award-winning journalist and war correspondent Michael Hastings, who was tragically killed this past Tuesday in the Hancock Park area of Los Angeles from a car crash, a fiery car crash.
He was one of the few journalists in every sense of the word. He wrote stories, and all he was interested in was the truth. He wrote the article about General McChrystal that was in Rolling Stone. That
oh yes, he did
about General McChrystal and his
Caused
staff
him
and
to
how they
resign,
operated.
Right?
Yeah, he resigned his command because of the public reaction to the things that Hastings exposed about how they were operating the army in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Truth in reporting can get you in trouble sometimes, unfortunately. And now, Ronnie, there's reports of an email that was sent by him to some folks. It was sent this past Monday to a select few people, and it said, "Hey, the feds are interviewing my close friends and associates. Perhaps if authorities arrive, BuzzFeed may be wise to immediately request legal counsel before any conversations or interviews about our news-gathering practices or related journalism issues." He continued to say, "Also, I'm into a big story and need to go off the radar for a bit. All the best, and hope to see you soon." About 15 hours later, 33-year-old Hastings was dead.
Well, they came out and denied it in a statement, but Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, came forward and said that he had had communications with Hastings in which Hastings, and it wasn't just Assange, apparently, he told his friends this too, but he told them that he was being investigated, and from all the little circumstantial pieces of information that we have so far after his death, it kind of seems like if he was being investigated and it was foul play, it's because of this story that he had to go off the grid a while for, because he said it was going to be big.
Right, it had to be something huge.
Well, if he says it's big, and he's the one that made a general resign his command, you got to think that whoever might be involved in the big story probably wouldn't have want it written.
Almost sounds like someone wanting to silence
that car
a witness.
That car was way too damaged.
Well, if anybody has seen a picture of that car, mangled car, it, of course, burst into flames. But
yeah, most cars don't explode upon impact.
Yeah, that's one thing I was looking at. I mean, it crashed into the tree on the driver's side, I believe.
Yeah, it looked like the
airbags
skidded in sideways, and the tree just clipped the middle, just implanted the tree in the middle of the car.
The airbags deployed, and usually that's all you see, upon it. You never see an explosion unless something just happens.
Yeah, this isn't the 70s. It wasn't a Pinto.
Right. Lay off my mom's old car.
Okay? Hey, man, the Pinto's always going to get ragged on.
What a coincidence it is. That's all I'm going to say, that it did burst into flames, and they had to identify him just through fingerprints.
Because his body was burnt beyond recognition.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't under the influence of anything. He was going to a serious meeting, an interview. Something had to go wrong with that vehicle, and it could have been made to go wrong.
He's in a fairly well-populated area. You got to think that, if there's a big fireball, a fire department could get there relatively quick,
Yeah.
But it's like when people try to burn the evidence when they kill somebody and put them in a car, and they try to light the car on fire. It has to burn so hot to produce different outcomes. The body being burnt beyond recognition, I kind of have to think about the possibility that there was an accelerant used. The fire burnt hot enough to do this, whereas a normal fire that would result from a wreck wouldn't have burned that hot and
to
wouldn't have been
a body.
wouldn't have burnt that hot or long enough to do this.
The fact that it corresponds with his email where he said he thought he was being watched and he was going to do this type of whistleblower reporting, then this happens.
If it was just Assange that came forward and said Hastings thought he was being investigated by the FBI, other of Michael Hastings' friends have confirmed the same thing. He told them, so apparently he thought it was important enough to inform those he trusted most in case something happened, it seemed.
Well, certainly a big loss to the journalism world. And I know our friends over at Young Turks are having a hard time dealing with it.
Yeah, Hastings was frequently on there. They back in the early 1900s, they used to call those kind of journalists muckrakers because they would go and they would expose these dirty, corrupt stories about politicians and people in power, that none of the nice, just want to make everybody happy newspapers would.
Wasn't that a James Bond movie, or it was Moonraker? I'm sorry.
Moonraker, yeah. We're on Earth here, not in space.
All right.
He just wanted the truth. He called him out on it every time.
No one loves investigative reporting, at least those on the other side of it.
It's almost a lost art. Like I said, there's very few journalists that I would put in that category, and Hastings was in that category in every sense of the word.
I think
journalism.
that is, if not the most exciting part of the news process, is the investigative part.
Yeah, who wants to watch parrots?
Right.
They get press releases from these things. They don't even really investigate to write the story. Somebody hands them a press release and they air it, the press release almost verbatim, and that's news.
Right.
But Michael Hastings did news. They weren't PR agents. They weren't press secretaries. These people investigate stories. And a lot of the things that we know and we consider are important things that we found out come from this small group of people who just want the truth.
Well, if it turns out to be conspiracy, then there's someone out there that doesn't like him doing his job.
Well, I'll tell you what, they might not like him, but I respect him, and he's an inspiration for me to do what we do here at the project.
Yes, his memory memory will live on with us, and thoughts and prayers to all of those folks who have gone and passed away this week. All right, Ronnie, it's our summertime show, and we have just started, so I don't want anybody to go away. When we come back, we're going to be going to the Hill, Capitol Hill, and talk about some of the things in Congress, about the debt ceiling and the immigration vote coming up. Lots of stuff like that on the way, and we still have a lot of things to talk about along the lines of Syria and Iran. And
don't let all these people here scare you off, man. We'll send them home if that'll make you more comfortable.
That's all coming up here on Parts in the Sum of the Whole, and another flashback to summertime right now.
Under the boardwalk, people walking above. Under the boardwalk, we'll be making love. Under the boardwalk, boardwalk. Standing on your mama's porch, you told me that it lasts forever. Those were the best days of my life. Oh yeah, back in the summer of '69. In the summertime, when the weather is high, you can stretch right up and touch the sky. When the weather's fine, you got women on your mind. Have a drink, have a drive, go out and
So when you get to the corner of Smith and Orchard, you're going to want to take a left.
You are not going to
Then what you're
going to
do is turn onto Marcy Avenue.
just broke up,
and go past the first
apparently
3
she's
lights,
happy
and then
about
take
it.
the next left.
I don't really
Then drive
think
5
she's
more
happy,
blocks,
but
and you should be
who
there.
am I to judge, right?
Park on the
Anyway,
right.
That's
I'll
what
see
I
you
heard
later
last
tonight.
night.
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Stick around, we'll tell you more.
Wow, welcome back to Parts in the Sum of the Whole. Those songs just remind me of just having a great time, maybe a little pina colada or
I like
something.
pina coladas.
Yes, that and margaritas, and drink responsibly, and you can have a good time. We're going to have the latest on the NSA scandal and Mr. Snowden, and also Syria, and we'll talk briefly about the new Iranian president and the changes taking place there. Going to Capitol Hill real quick, Speaker of the House John Boehner said this past Thursday that he would negotiate a debt ceiling increase with spending cuts, potentially setting up another fight with the president and congressional Democrats.
Hey, they're going to bring it down to the line.
Here we go again.
And then they'll postpone it again.
Well, it's going to be a repeat of the 2011 situation when the House Republicans used, raising the debt ceiling to extract spending cuts. It resulted in the across-the-board cuts known as the
sequestration strikes again.
But the next time around, in January, the House voted to suspend the debt ceiling until May without concessions. And
every day, or at least the 3 days that I've been producing the Daily News Wire, there's always been one story that is primarily about the effects of sequestration. It happens so consistently and often, I had to make its own category.
Well, that's why
sequestration strikes again.
That's why the Thunderbirds didn't go to the Dayton Air Show.
That's right.
It's every little section.
And the Republicans can blame Obama for, the deal that this was made under and the fact that it got implemented, but, it's all because they wouldn't let anything else happen.
Well, because of the cash flow, I guess Treasury Secretary Jack Lew has anticipated that the United States government will not need new borrowing authority until around Labor Day to meet its obligations. And actually, up until 2011, both parties historically had raised the debt ceiling without linking it to other spending priorities. So why they're doing it now?
I'm not a big fan of the call for, drastic cuts. And if the United States can't even pay its bills for a year without having to get a loan so that they could pay their day-to-day obligations, then that's just something's wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
It's that or
I don't agree with the Republicans and their view on the budget, but there absolutely is some sort of problem if you can't, without a loan, pay your bills for the next year.
Well, they expect us to do it. They expect
the
the average Joe to budget and make it through the month, and then our own United States government can't do it.
A lot of that are the obligations that we have. The debt ceiling limit raises are to pay for things that have already gone into law, not new laws or whatever. This is just paying for the obligations you already have. But one of the problems about us getting loans is the fact that our credit rating got downgraded.
Yeah, and my girl Erin Burnett on Out Front on CNN, she keeps track of that every day. We've lost that credit rating, and what are we doing to get it back?
She's your celebrity crush, isn't she?
Yeah, sort of.
I have several.
My celebrity news crush, at least.
I don't like Fox News, but I think Megyn Kelly's cute.
Let's talk
as long
about...
as she doesn't talk.
As long as she doesn't talk.
She's good to look at.
Okay. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid from Nevada said this past Friday that his chamber will hold a procedural vote tomorrow at 5:30 on the border security agreement crafted by the Republican Senators Bob Corker of Tennessee and John Hoeven of North Dakota.
Boehner's got a problem with that.
They're trying to squeeze this in before the July 4th recess, and they're expected to pass the Corker-Hoeven deal, which is actually pretty much a compromise centered around a significant increase in security measures along the United States-Mexico border. It will include an additional 20,000 Border Patrol agents, $3.2 billion in high-tech surveillance equipment, and a requirement to complete 700 miles of fencing along the border. They're expected to pass that. So.
Yeah, Boehner's got a problem with that, with the immigration thing, though, because he said he won't put it to a vote on the House if it didn't have a majority of the Republican Party behind it.
Will it pass the House? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a little more...
Everybody kind of agrees that we need some kind of immigration reform.
Right.
But what is always reported in the main immigration deal going on now, when the Senate passes it and it goes to vote in the House, or is up for possible vote in the House, Boehner's already said that he won't, as Speaker of the House, he won't put it to a vote unless it has the support of a majority of the Republican Party, And you can't really count on that. So if it doesn't get a majority of the Republican Party, then Boehner either has to not put it up for a vote or work out some kind of deal with the Democrats to make up the difference, because the Republicans have the majority in the House.
Right.
But if he does any kind of deal with the Democrats, it's already been highly suggested that the Republicans will strip him of the speakership. He'll lose his position as Speaker of the House for dealing with the Democrats.
Well, Politico is saying that they predicted that as many as 15 Senate Republicans may sign on to the overall bill, but that remains a premature figure at this point.
The problem is all these little amendments that they want to attach to it, especially the right. Rubio wrote the thing, and now he's against it unless... It's his bill. He wrote it,
Right.
And he's against the bill he wrote unless it has some of these amendments and attachments to it, So... Why they put forward a bill that has a chance of passing, and then the sponsor of that bill says the bill isn't right, and they've done this a lot in the past too, and it's just outrageous. They're just they're trying to create scandals so they can stall for time and don't have to do anything.
People like Rubio's going to be riding this like a high horse because of his 2016 presidential ambitions.
Yeah, everybody mentions his name, but realistically
they even play the Marco Polo game. Rubio. But now the overall bill will create a pathway to citizenship for millions of undocumented immigrants while modernizing the nation's legal immigration system, adding the enforcement measures in order to deter future illegal immigration in the United States.
We need to secure our borders better. If for no other reason, then it's just good security. But the targeted focus on Mexicans and Latinos, I think, does more harm than good. People are always going to be able to somehow get across the border, but there's been a lawsuit brought against Arizona and the federal government because border guards, they can consider somebody, on the other side of the fence or that has climbed over and got on U.S. soil. Those immigrants, if they throw a rock at these border patrol agents, the border patrol agents are allowed to, consider that
a threatening,
a deadly,
deadly force
weapon
issue.
Thing, and they're allowed to shoot them and kill them.
Gee whiz.
Yeah, and they're completely authorized to do that, and they suffer no repercussions. I mean, and this is throwing a rock. I'm sorry, but they say you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. At least the knife can cut. You're throwing gravel at a border agent, and he's allowed to shoot you with his semi-automatic assault rifle, that's a little, unbalanced. That's not proportional, to the offense. And it's just crazy. And these are the kind of amendments that they're trying to attach to the immigration bill.
Well, I can see why they would want to go through it with a fine-tooth comb before something like that would get passed along with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's already the way it happens in some places now, but they want to add more of these kind of amendments to the bill, and this is what keeps everybody arguing about the bill. Because of these ridiculous amendments that are completely,
Are they trying to put up like a Great Wall of China type thing on our border? Or?
Yeah, I mean, Howard Kane, when he was running for president, wanted to build like a 20, 30-foot tall fence.
Yeah, I remember
with,
that.
Electrified razor wire on top and all that. It's just crazy. There's we need to make sure that we have some kind of security over our borders. If for no other reason than to make our country safer.
National
safer,
security, yes.
But I think it's a form of discrimination for these amendments and these regulations to be targeted against a specific race or ethnic group.
I agree.
But that never seems to come up in any of these debates.
Well, we'll see what happens. Let's talk about the latest in the NSA scandal and whistleblower Edward Snowden.
They filed a criminal complaint. Finally, the federal government did, charge him on 3 things. 2 of them are violations of the Espionage Act, which Bradley Manning is currently being tried for as well.
Theft of government property, unauthorized communication of national defense information, and willful communication of classified communications intelligence to an unauthorized person. And that's according to the actual criminal complaint.
Right. We have the document, folks.
The latter 2 offenses fall under the U.S. Espionage Act, like you said, and carry penalties of up to 10 years in prison. So.
Yeah, I mean,
But he's not going to stick around to see what happens. It sounds like he's going to be going to Iceland, maybe, as a safe haven.
He's been offered a ride. Everybody keeps mentioning, the people that are calling for his head on a platter. Say that we have an extradition treaty with Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. It was kind of murky because recently, technically, Hong Kong is under the authority of China, but they're relatively autonomous on that island, And we do have an extradition treaty with Hong Kong. Our government has requested that they place him under arrest.
1998.
But there's a tiny little loophole that may save Snowden's skin in the fact that the extradition treaty has a provision in it where Hong Kong won't extradite somebody if they're going back to stand against charges that are a political crime in nature. Mm-hmm. And espionage has always been under the category of political crime, so they could get out of having to send him back to the United States. Now, one of the WikiLeaks people, an Icelandic journalist, has offered to provide the plane to fly him from Hong Kong to Iceland if Iceland will grant him asylum.
Which we're waiting on to see if they're going to do. Yeah.
And they might stand a good chance because WikiLeaks and Iceland have a nice little relationship, and Iceland's become one of the new bastions in the world for freedom of speech and journalism, and these leaks and stuff could fall under that, since they were released to a journalist organization, The Guardian and The Washington Post, So, and even if Iceland doesn't, there's other places. Russia has said, they'll consider it, and blah blah. But Hong Kong, it seems, doesn't have to extradite him. But you always got to wonder about if Obama was still doing these warrantless surveillance things like that. Maybe they're secretly still doing stuff like extraordinary renditions.
Yeah,
and they just go and kidnap him and take him out of the country.
You never know. He's given the Chinese stuff that they want to hear, though. They're saying that he offered new details on U.S. surveillance activities within China by the U.S., that the NSA program hacked the Hong Kong headquarters of PACnet, which is an extensive fiber optic network. And I guess, the U.S. law enforcement response to this, they told Reuters that, the United States and Hong Kong have had excellent cooperation as a result of our agreements, and it might take a few years, but they'll eventually get Snowden from China. But again, that's all based on whether he goes on to Iceland or not.
Well, I see a great possibility for him ending up like Assange is, holed up in the embassy of a country that's granting, political asylum. Assange is in the Ecuadorian embassy in Britain, so trying to stave off extradition to Sweden, because I think there's a good case to be made for the fact that him saying his reason for this is that he fears as soon as Sweden gets him, they'll give him to the U.S. to face charges. I mean, there's complaints filed against Assange, too. Mm-hmm. But the U.S. and China stuff wasn't the only thing we've learned from Snowden's leaks. This week, a bunch of information came out that revealed that Britain might have an even bigger surveillance program than we do here in the U.S. Documents that he released, the document revealed that there are 2 projects going on that make use of, because Britain is on the western coast of Europe and has access to the Atlantic and stuff, they have access to where these fiber optic cables come up out of the transatlantic ocean thing. Mm-hmm. And they've tapped into over 200 fiber optic cables and are siphoning just all this data off the net.
Wow. Then
we learned that the NSA surveillance isn't the only surveillance we've got to fear. Mueller testified in front of a congressional committee this week that, yes, the FBI operates surveillance drones in the U.S.
Inside our borders.
Yes. He tried to make it clear to say we hardly ever use them and stuff like. Well, we have a clip. Here's his answer to the question.
We are in the initial stages of doing that, and I will tell you that our footprint is very small. We have very few and have limited use, and we're exploring not only the use but also the necessary guidelines for that use.
Does the FBI use drones for surveillance on U.S. soil?
Yes.
I want to go on to a question.
And let me just put it in context, though, in a very, very minimal way, and very seldom.
Okay.
Okay, well.
Yeah, it's scary to think about, drones up there. We've been seeing little news things about cities and law enforcement thinking about the possibility of using these, but apparently the FBI already is and has been. But it's all part of this intelligence complex between government and intelligence and the private sector and corporations. Michael Hayden,
it's very scary, I tell you.
Yeah, he was head of the NSA when 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
Later he became director of the CIA. He had this to say about the emergence of this little shadow kind of culture.
We may come to a point where defense is more actively and aggressively defined even for the private sector, and what is permitted there is something we would never let the private sector do in physical space. I mean, you look well. I mean, let me really throw out a bumper sticker for you here. How about a digital Blackwater? Okay, I mean, we have privatized certain defense activities even in physical space. And now you've got a new domain in which we don't have any paths trampled down in the forest in terms of what it is we expect the government or will allow the government to do. And in the past, in our history, when that has happened, private sector expands to fill the empty space. I'm not quite an advocate for that, but these are the kinds of things that are going to be put into play here very, very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, the regular Blackwater, the private contractors that we sent over to Iraq to fight for us, they were from a company, Blackwater. They were essentially mercenaries. There was a whole scandal, and the company changed their name and whatnot, but they did that. We know all the terrible stuff they did in Iraq. Could you imagine a digital Blackwater?
Oh, wow, no. I couldn't imagine that.
But that's the way it is. That's the way it's going, and apparently has been for some time.
Well, obviously, Edward Snowden has information that the government thinks is going to be detrimental to our national security.
Well, there's new stuff every day. Well, I wonder how much he took with him, because they release some big bombshell every day.
It's concerning people, in the high echelon positions. You can check our website, partsinthesum.com, this week for the very latest. As soon as we hear if he is being extradited or if he seeks asylum in Iceland, we'll
let you know. Those stories will fall under the national security/surveillance state category.
What do you got coming up in your commentary here in a little while?
Well, a couple weeks ago, the House of Representatives voted for the 37th time to repeal Obamacare,
Mm-hmm.
This week, they voted on federal widespread ban on abortions after 20 weeks, even though the White House has already said it would veto it, and I don't even think the Senate would pass it. They're just wasting all this time with stuff they know they won't work, that, isn't going to go anywhere, but they do it anyways when they could be working on other stuff. It's about that, although I kind of see an aspect of it that you might not expect.
All right, so that we'll look forward to that in the commentary coming up. Also, our trivia question. When we come back on our summertime edition of Parts in the Sum on the Whole, we're going to touch on the latest in Syria, also Iran's new president, how he's getting along, and the victory of moderation, they're calling it, and
booyah.
So much more. And a new segment that I'm going to call Dirty Laundry. We have the latest on Paula Deen in my very first segment of Dirty Laundry.
I can't wait to hear it, man.
It's on the way. Parts in the Sum of the Whole. Stick around.
In today's world, it's easy to get tunnel vision with current happenings. You can get lost in the confusion. On our weekly podcast, Parts in the Sum of the Whole, we take the whole picture and break it down to understand the parts of the story in the context you should know. We dig for the truth and try to find facts that some try to hide. We are not a political show or a news show, but we will discuss topics or headlines that are important to you. In general, Parts in the Sum of the Whole is the place to go to find out about everything. Tell your friends and join us each Sunday. Check us out at partsinthesum.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/partsinthesum, on Twitter at partsinthesum, or email us info@partsinthesum.com. And thanks for listening. Get ready for this week's trivia question to win a great prize from our vault. Remember, only one person can win within a 30-day period. Good luck.
Oh, yeah. Sounds of summer.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you had already started. I was going to say I'd
you heard the summertime songs, Ronnie.
Oh,
that
yeah.
That means we're coming back.
Well, I'm sorry I was late. I definitely wasn't hitting on that blonde over there in the second row.
I was thinking, you've been eyeballing her, but you know what I was thinking, Ronnie? This is really the only time I see you throughout the whole week because you're just always busy getting stuff ready for the show. We never see each other until we actually sit down and we're introduced in the podcast.
Well, I do a lot of stuff in my center. Mission control.
It's nice to see you once a week at least.
Wait till we get video and you can see it, folks.
Our trivia question of the week, still around the corner. It's one you may have to look up. The first person to post the correct answer to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/partsinthesum, beginning Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
That's right.
Will win a Facebook gift card. Now, this week, the Facebook gift card, of course, gives you the quick and easy ways to buy items in your favorite games and apps. And I've never seen so many people so in love with this game called Candy Crush. I don't want to get into it too deep, but it is like the phenomenon.
There's little games that Facebook have are excellent little diversions from the day. And I tell you what, all you Farmville players...
Farmville, yeah, there's one.
You could use this card to get you some stuff, man.
But please do not send me game requests. There's a lot of folks that don't play them. But.
Yeah.
Now, the latest in Syria, unless the bloodshed in Syria stops, the region could actually descend into chaotic, sectarian conflict.
World War IV.
That is the statement from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Just yesterday, he called for an urgent political resolution to the war that has now dragged on for 2 years, claimed over 93,000 lives.
Yeah. Kerry spends a lot of time in the Middle East these days.
Yeah, he spent yesterday with counterparts from 10 Arab and European nations, agreed at a day-long meeting in Qatar to step up military and other, assistance to the rebels.
Well, Obama says they crossed the red line, so America will be giving them some form of assistance. The one of the leaders of the rebels say that they've already received some arms. So, but
arms
there are a lot.
Meaning what?
It didn't specify.
Yeah, that's what.
And it didn't really specify from who. Just
Secretary
that they received
Kerry
some.
Was saying that he did not or would not disclose the details of the aid, quote unquote aid they're giving them. But
the problem is that the whole Western world is trying to help the rebels. Russia is digging in deeper on its stance that the Western world is wrong. He's questioning the evidence for the chemical warfare.
Vladimir Putin's up on his horse. You guys are wrong.
Nah. Should have seen him and Obama at the G8 summit. A little photo op of the two of them. Looked like a married couple that were in the middle of a fight and then had to sit down and be civil to the people they had invited over for the party.
Certainly no bromance there at all. But one thing, Secretary Kerry said is that the aid would rebalance the fight between the rebels and Assad's better equipped forces. So that right there kind of tells me that they're giving them some power, some sort of. The aid is good,
but not they. Some of the things that would have the better probability to help them, we've already said that we won't give them. A no-fly zone, we won't give them.
We won't give them the good things they need.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
Give them AKs. Assad's still got F-16s raining hell down from the skies.
Yeah,
what's a Glock going to do to that?
And the Falcon can certainly rain hell down. Top U.S. diplomats are ready to go to Geneva to meet with UN Arab League envoy Brahimi and other officials this coming week to advance the political process. So he's actually on a big seven-nation tour, kind of attacking everything from U.S. foreign policy issues, finding peace between the Israelis and Palestinians, to actually talking with the Taliban to end the Afghanistan war.
He was supposed to. They announced that the Taliban was going to sit down with talks with the U.S., and then Karzai in Afghanistan got a little mad that we were talking directly to the Taliban and not, involving him in the thing. They said they wouldn't attend, and like the day after it was announced that we were going to have talks, it was announced that we weren't going to have them because, it all fell apart rather quickly.
Well, I still think, even though we're over there trying to focus on peace and a smooth resolution to Assad's horrible ways, that will eventually be involved in some sort of armed military conflict eventually.
Yeah, I think the most likely way that would happen is if and when Israel decides to get involved with ground troops. We will have to go in on the side of Israel.
Right, and they could do that on their own.
Right, and they've been cavalier about that in the past. I mean, the 6-Day War in 67, they had another invasion of Lebanon and stuff in the 70s. And they have history says that when the right stars align, Israel has no problem with conducting aggression against its neighbors. And if and when Israel gets in there and the first casualties on the Israeli side come in, then people here in the United States are going to be screaming for us to go in there and help the Israelis.
Yeah.
And we would get dragged in just because, Israel almost pressured us into an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities last fall. And we had to try to talk them out of it, and it took us a while because at first when we said no, they took the position that they were going to do it anyways.
Right.
So their conservative party is a little more hair-triggery than our government is.
Well, maybe we won't have to worry about the Iranian nuclear program as much with the new president.
They got a new president.
Victory of moderation, they're calling it. They've had thousands of jubilant Iranians pouring into the streets in celebration of the victory, and so we'll see how this turns out as far as the support of its nuclear program and the civil war, everything going on there with Syria, and
the thing that,
of course, everything remains under the domain of the supreme leader at this point, the Ayatollah Khomeini.
Right. That's what kind of makes me step back and think about it a little more, because there were 6 candidates. 5 of them were right-wing. 1 of them was a moderate and ran as moderate, and it eventually won. But the Supreme Council, the Ayatollah and everybody, they picked those 6 candidates. They chose them and said, "This is who you get to choose from."
So
and the people chose the moderate one, not the right-wing and far-right people. But if Iran has somewhat of a constant philosophy about how it's supposed to conduct things, then the fact that they handpicked the candidates means that behind the scenes, in some fashion, the way they conduct their affairs is still going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
We're just waiting to see what stays the same and how much of it was just Ahmadinejad now that he's not going to be in there. So, yeah, it's a big wait and see.
What's he going to be doing now?
He was called before a criminal in court for an indictment the day after the election.
Oh, gee, hey.
It wasn't stated what, the charges were or whatever, but, the day after the election, he had to appear in court.
You're out of office, here's an indictment.
That's right.
Well, Washington says it stands ready to engage with Iran now with the new leader to reach a diplomatic solution over its nuclear program, which the West suspects is intended to produce nuclear weapons, something that Iran continues to deny.
Well, we should always be open to talks.
Oh, yeah, with anybody.
If there's a chance at all that we could get things solved peacefully, then we should absolutely try to go that route.
Military action should be the last resort.
Right. It's just, if there is military action, there's always going to be some kind of casualties.
Right.
And you got to think that if we had to go to a war with Iran and go over there, even if it only lasted one day, there would be substantial casualties.
It always seems, though, whenever there's like the line in the sand in Libya back in the Bush days, and the red line that
they like their
Assad
lines.
just crossed, it seems like whenever we have a line, they'll cross it, and then that's when we have to use our last resort.
Yeah, well, as far as the radical elements like Hezbollah and whatever, one of their primary ongoing purposes is to hurt America because we're still over there. So if we draw a line and say that if you cross this line, we're going to come back in some form of retaliation, they would have no reason to not cross that line because they want America in so that they can fight us. But there's just the far-right Muslims, Islam. Not all Muslims are like that. And the ones who aren't present a pretty good case by pointing to the Quran and saying what these extremists are doing is not what our religion is. But any military action that involves us on one side and any Arab or Persian, Iran isn't even Arab, it's Persian.
Right.
It's going to immediately have kind of blind sheep support because we lump all of them in together.
Yeah.
It's just like here. Not all evangelicals or fundamentalists are bad, but the only ones you really see are the ones that are. And you shouldn't judge the whole group by the few that you get to interact with.
And then still in the same region, just the other day, wasn't it in Iraq that there was a Shiite mosque blown up by a suicide bomber?
Yeah, it's hard to think that a Muslim would, blow up a mosque. And it just goes to show you that whoever did it thought that it would be all right. And I've read some of the Quran. I have a copy of it, from my religious research. You got to think that an interpretation of it that made this suicide bomber think he was justified in blowing up a mosque, which is like a Christian going into a church and blowing it up. Mm-hmm. He's got to be interpreting that wrong, You got to think that the Quran, there's no way you could begin to believe that it would say blowing up a mosque is okay.
Right, the place that you worship in. Interesting. Still violence everywhere. The Middle East, really a hotbed for everything. Let's change subjects and get over to the United States here in the Zimmerman trial, the latest jury selected this past week. And as soon as that came across the wire, I ran into your
6
studio.
women.
6 women on the jury.
I mean, of course, they went through jury selection, and the defense and the prosecution signed off on these 6 people plus the 4 alternates.
Now, there's 2 women and 2 men alternates. So,
yeah, but you got to think that a great potential cause for declaring a mistrial is the fact that they're all female. You would think that somebody could bring up in an appeal some kind that meant and produced some kind of unfair bias.
And if I do believe I remember it correctly, I don't have the paper in front of me, that 4 of them out of the 6 were African American women and 2 Caucasian. Does that sound right to you?
It was a breakdown, something like that. But it was just so surprising to hear that they were all not that I have anything against women. They're fine. I'm speaking in more terms of the procedure of the trial. You would think that would be a valid possible claim for an unfair trial for the defendant because...
Well, the way that I look at a jury of your peers would be a mixture of both male and female of your peers.
But the prosecution's case just got harder when Saturday the judge ruled that the prosecution's witnesses, the sound witnesses that were there to determine whether the call for help on the 911 recording came from Trayvon or from Zimmerman, the judge ruled that those experts couldn't testify. They couldn't use that as evidence. I don't necessarily know how big a blow it's going to end up being. I think a lot of the stuff that's still in there is pretty convincing as to Zimmerman's guilt. When you have the 911 operator asking him Zimmerman, if he's following this person that he's calling 911 about, and he says, yeah, the 911 operator says, we don't need you to do that. Don't do that. So everything after that, I think you could construe as aggressive or instigative on Zimmerman's part. He should have stopped when the 911 operator said, stop, we don't need you to do that.
Well, one of the prosecution's most influential witnesses may have been Alan Reich. Now, he's the voice identification expert who says Trayvon is heard screaming stop in the background of the 911 call placed by a resident. The screaming stops abruptly when a gunshot is heard. A defense forensic voice expert said Reich's report was bewildering, and the methods used to listen to the recording have never been used to actually evaluate those type of recordings.
Well, sometimes you got. I mean, yeah, there's a pay your dues kind of thing when you're doing new forensic processes and whatnot. But one of the things that's still the biggest strike against Zimmerman that I can think of is that even if he thought Trayvon had a gun and whatever, once he actually started interacting with him, I think it would have become obvious by the fact that Trayvon didn't pull a gun on him, and Zimmerman had a gun. How terrified could he have been against a teenager wielding a bag of Skittles if he's standing there with a firearm in his hand?
Yeah.
There was no ground for him to stand.
Yeah,
even if he thought there was originally, once he got over there and started interacting with him, it would have become immediately apparent that it wasn't, because Trayvon never pulled out a gun.
Right.
You know?
It all comes down to the interpretation of the Stand Your Ground law, and, of course...
Another state passed that. The governor of Alaska signed Alaska's Stand Your Ground law, and the little press conference that happened when he signed it, he did it at a shooting range.
Oh, wow. He used that as the backdrop.
Yeah. Can you just imagine just the big middle finger that was to, all the victims of shooters that got acquitted in a way scot-free on ridiculous interpretations of the Stand Your Ground law. And he signs Alaska's at a gun range.
I can't believe that.
It's just a big F-U.
Yeah, it is. A big slap in the face. And for those of you who have been living under a rock for the past half a year or so, Zimmerman has pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder. The former Neighborhood Watch volunteer says he shot Trayvon in self-defense after being attacked.
You gotta watch your Skittles, man.
Prosecutors say he profiled and murdered Trayvon. So we'll see what that happens. The statements start tomorrow. 6 women, again, serving as jurors. 2 women, 2 men are alternates. Ronnie, coming up, I have the very first installment of my Dirty Laundry segment of the show. We're going to feature someone's dirty laundry every week, and this week, Paula Deen has made the list, and we'll discuss that. But before all of that, let's get to our trivia question this week.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Good luck to you, and a chance to win a Facebook gift card this week. The quick and easy way to buy items in your favorite games and apps on Facebook. That is our prize, and the way to win the trivia contest is after we ask the question here on Monday evening, tomorrow evening, or whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully you're listening to it on Sunday. You can start to answer it, just like the phone lines open up on American Idol, at 6 p.m. Eastern Monday.
That's right.
Whoever the first one is after that point to answer the question correctly will win our prize every week.
On our Facebook page, facebook.com/partsinthesum.
Yes.
You should go there and like it, and tell your friends to go there and like it, so that you can get news throughout the week and be able to participate in discussion and never be left entirely uninformed.
Just like one person told me, if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't know what was happening in the world. So,
well,
that was a compliment. Thank you.
Even if it ever just stays just that one person, I'll be proud of that.
I agree. Here it is. Give us at least 2 of the lawmakers that voted against the Patriot Act in 2001. We just need 2. Give us at least 2 of the lawmakers that voted against the Patriot Act in 2001. And the source for that is the Congressional Record, officially.
Yeah,
so,
the Patriot Act was signed about a month after 9/11, and it gave broad powers with absolutely no debate. Some of the people in Congress complained that they didn't have time to read it. It was so big. And the Patriot Act is what allows the NSA and the FBI to do what they're doing now. Everything that's happening now grew from that passage. So,
oh yeah, definitely. We got the Facebook page. We've got our Twitter at Parts in the Sum, and also don't forget the brand new www.partsinthesum.com, which is just outstanding. Ronnie is responsible for all of that, and a great way just to click one click and you can hear our podcasts. But
right,
he's
there
got
at the banner on the top of the page.
He's got the commentary, and it's on the way next. Here on Parts and the Sum of the Whole, our summertime edition. More summer music coming right now.
Hey.
Saturday in the park, I think it was the 4th of July. Saturday in the park, I think it was the 4th of July. People dancing, people laughing, a man selling ice cream, singing.
You're so annoying. Stop copying me.
Stop copying me.
Mom, tell her to stop copying me.
Mom, tell her to stop talking to me.
Kids will spend 10 minutes copying everything their sibling says.
You're such a
You're
doofus.
such a doofus.
How about 2 minutes to brush their teeth? Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. For fun 2-minute videos to watch while brushing, visit 2min2x.org. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Mom!
A message from the Partnership for Healthy Mouths, Healthy Lives, and the Ad Council.
It's time for our weekly commentary. Here's the philosopher monk, Ronnie Glenn.
The United States, plaintiff versus the Republican Party. If 2 or more persons in any state or territory, or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States, contrary to the authority thereof, they shall each be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 20 years, or both. United States Code. The House of Representatives, knowing ahead of time that there was no chance of the bill becoming law, voted anyway on a bill that would place a federal ban on abortions after 20 weeks. And it passed, because of the Republican majority. The chance that the Senate, receiving the bill from the House, would also pass it was virtually zero. The White House, in response to the announcement of this bill, had said before the vote that it would get a rubber-stamped veto. A few weeks ago, before she announced that she would not be running again for her seat in the legislature, Michelle Bachmann submitted a bill to repeal Obamacare. Speaker of the House John Boehner, a Republican from Ohio, allowed it on the floor for a vote, making it the 37th time that they had voted to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act. When it passed, again, due solely to the Republican majority, Bachmann glowed with giddiness in a video she made to announce her victory. But again, for the 37th time, this would get no further, and they knew that ahead of time, but they did it anyway. And here's my problem. One of the big things happening right now in Congress is the immigration reform bill that the Senate is working on. It will probably pass the Senate and go to the House for a vote. But Boehner has announced, before the House even gets the bill, that he wouldn't allow it to come to the floor to be put to a vote unless a majority of his party supported the bill. So the House, vengefully dominated by Republicans, uses their majority to pass bills that have no chance, and that wastes time. And now they're not going to let the Senate get any bills to Obama's desk either. But this kind of opposition isn't new. The Republican Party as a whole has, in the past, declared and stated that they were going to be there to oppose anything Obama and the Democrats tried to do, regardless of what it was. The ATF doesn't have a director, hasn't for years. The way it used to work was that the president just appointed somebody to that position without having to get congressional approval like the Supreme Court justices or the secretaries of state and defense have to do. But then a Republican, a sneaky one, slipped one sentence into a bill that changed that. Now the Senate has to confirm someone for that position, and they just don't do anything about it, so it's been left for years with only an acting director. During one of the debt ceiling crises, two important things happened. One is an example of the Republican Party really operating for the goal of undermining or obstructing and not real honest negotiations. As the deadline got closer and closer, the Democrats and President Obama relented and ended up letting the Republicans have all the things they were asking or demanding. When the Republicans got that little victory, instead of saying, oh great, let's get this thing passed through Congress since it now has everything we asked for, they added new demands that hadn't come up until right then. They were just trying to keep the deadlock going. The second thing that happened was an effect of the first thing. It was big news when it was announced that Moody's, a financial company that rates borrowers' creditworthiness, revealed that they were downgrading a step, for the first time in history, the AAA credit rating of the United States. And they didn't do this for any of the reasons that, being a nation of borrowers in debt, we might think. It wasn't about the finances. It was about the politics. Moody's downgraded the credit rating because of the political issues that gum up our government. Moody's was less confident that something could get accomplished, and therefore the politics may hamper any future financial dealings between the United States and the lenders it acquires loans from. And now we come to that piece of the United States Code that I put up there at the beginning. Quote, if two or more persons in any state or territory, or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, conspire to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, end quote. This is a clause from the United States Code under a heading titled Seditious Conspiracy. There are numerous examples I could use, but I'll choose just one. The Affordable Health Care Act, known as Obamacare, was passed and is now law. The Republican majority in the House of Representatives have, 37 times, as a bloc, voted, knowing the futility of the vote to repeal, or some might say, quote, prevent, hinder, or delay this law and its execution. Though it, not really being a surprise, was pointless 36 other times, Speaker of the House John Boehner, when asked why he was allowing the repeal of Obamacare to come to a vote on the House floor for the 37th time, said, because we have some new people here who haven't had the chance to vote on it yet. Completely insane reasoning, as the bill was passed and signed into law years before. It's ridiculous to think that you could go back and vote on past laws of the United States just because a first-time Congress member didn't get a chance. With that reasoning, you could bring back a vote for the Civil Rights Act, or the legislation that the New Deal operated on. But Boehner won't let this immigration bill come to a vote before his House even gets to look at it, unless a majority of his party wanted to support it. So now the Republicans are expanding to not even allowing a bill passed by the Senate and given to the House for a vote to even be voted on unless the Republican Party wants to. I think you could rightfully call the Republican Party's past and continued methods and philosophies for their actions seditious. And if the Constitution of the United States didn't strictly define treason as, quote, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort, end quote. If the Constitution didn't define it the way it does, I think you could even make an argument for the actions of the Republicans as treason. They might not be bringing war and force against the government or directly giving an enemy aid and comfort. But then again, we are currently in the war on terror. Terror isn't actually an enemy, not one you could fight. It's a tactic, a method, an ideology, and we're at war against it. We define our country by our Constitution. We define our country by the method of government the Constitution sets out. We define our country by the common ideology that it is the people who freely govern themselves. I think the actions, past and present, of the Republican Party are attacks on all these things. So, sedition, treason. For a complete transcript of what you just heard, you can log on to partsinthesum.com and find it under the op-ed section.
This is HometownStation.net.
Internet radio. The only thing that does matter is great music, and you will find it here.
HometownStation.net.
All right.
The best music.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
This is the station with all your music in one place.
We are
HometownStation.net. We play what we like.
No doubt, son, you gotta work late.
Sometimes I wonder what I'm gonna do, but there ain't no cure
for the summertime.
Trees swaying in the summer breeze, showing off their silver leaves as we walked by. Soft kisses on a summer's day, laughing all our cares away.
Welcome back to Parts in the Sum of the Whole. That was a great commentary once again this week, Ronnie. I appreciate it. All the hard work you do on those commentaries. Next week is our celebration of America's birthday, the Independence show. It'll certainly be full of fireworks with everything happening in the world, and we're going to be kind of focusing on the birth of our nation and talking about our founding fathers and some historical facts that you might find interesting. It's our red, white, and blue edition next week. Don't you dare miss that. And a great prize to win, of course, in our trivia. Well, it's a new segment I like to call Dirty Laundry, and we'll hear from Don Henley and his song in just a little bit. But our Dirty Laundry segment, we're going to dig up some stuff on Paula Deen here in just a second. You know, Paula Deen's in trouble right now and has kind of gotten fired because of racial slurs, using racial slurs and different things like that. But there's another story out.
Yeah, she's in trouble for using the N-word, but there was another story about that sort of thing that came out, and it's a little more vicious and cruel than just, using the word. This frat house in Chicago, at the University of Chicago, they, as a prank, ordered something from this company. Ended up being 79 boxes.
They ordered 79 boxes from a company addressed to their frat house.
Right. The day it came, they all stood and watched as the mailman, he was an African American, pulling these, going back and forth to the truck and, delivering the boxes and whatever. And he got, up to the 79th box, and I guess the frat guys just couldn't hold it in any longer, and they let him in on the prank. And the prank was this. If you looked at the address label, the name on it, spelled backwards, is a homophobic slur and the N-word.
So what was the name? What was it? What did it say?
Well, I guess spelled
actually?
Backwards, it would be Reagan Togiff. You spell that backwards, and there's, a homosexual and racial slur.
So it'd be Reggin, and then the last name would be Toggaf.
Right.
And
we're
they called
spelling it out because we really don't want to say it.
Right. Well, they called that to his attention and maybe just laughed at him. And
yeah, this was all just one big prank. I'm not sure if the mailman himself was homosexual, but the race, the N-word itself, was insulting enough, and
That's
it's caused
horrible.
the Postal Service to investigate the company that shipped the boxes, and to investigate the frat and the people who perpetrated this.
Wow.
Yeah, prank.
The university could lose their fraternity license, or the house. They could suspend it or get rid of it altogether.
This can be considered a hate crime.
Right.
And
wow.
Nobody's talking about that because I'm sure the frat house was full of blonde-haired, blue-eyed white males.
Well, it's bad enough the postal workers have to put up, when they're delivering with dogs and stuff,
But to stand there and watch him deliver 79 boxes.
Oh, I know. It had to have taken a long time.
Right. And then let him in on the joke at the end that they are being completely vicious. I want to say bigots, but that's not the right word. Maybe
cold-hearted. Just downright cold-hearted.
I think the term I want to call them I probably shouldn't say over the air, so I'm just going to stop. But it was entirely wrong and way more vicious and damaging than all the attention that's been given to the fact that Miss Dean used a word years ago. Even though she shouldn't have done it either. But, yeah.
Right. Well, getting to that, our dirty laundry of the week. Paula Deen recently admitted in a lawsuit deposition that she has used the N-word. And she's being sued, along with her brother, Bubba Hares, by a lady, Lisa Jackson. She's a former manager of the siblings restaurant Uncle Bubba's Seafood and Oyster House. The lawsuit alleges sexual harassment in a work environment rife with racial slurs. Now, because of this, and her admission, the Food Network says it will not renew Paula's contract after the of them finding out what she had
I'm surprised there wasn't a public relations clause in the contract that would let them cancel it right now.
You know what? They probably never thought that someone like Paula Deen would ever do that, and probably didn't even think of putting a clause in like that. But I know they will now.
I'm sure they'll put some kind of clause.
You go into something like this with someone who's kind of family-friendly, like Paula Deen, with the best of intentions, and you just never know, really, until something like this happens. But the network said that it would not renew her contract. And, of course, she had built an empire from her television shows, cookbooks, and product endorsements.
She definitely didn't make recipes that were entirely healthy. But then again, there's a reason why they call it Southern Fried Chicken and
right.
all that other stuff.
There was that time she got in trouble here not too long ago about the fat content in a lot of her recipes.
I tend to think that those foods are better than the healthy foods. But
they always are. But you can never eat them. All the good stuff you never can eat. The network's announcement came just hours after she posted 2 videos online apologizing for her past mistakes. And that's where we leave you with today's Dirty Laundry. Paula, take it away.
I want to apologize to everybody. I beg you for the wrong that I've done. Please forgive me. I want to learn and grow from this. Inappropriate, hurtful language is totally unacceptable. Please forgive me. I beg you. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I beg you, please forgive me. My children, my team, my fans, my partners, I beg for your forgiveness. Please forgive me for the mistakes that I've made.
You're fired. 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 You're fired.
There you go. A little Donald Trump in there. You're fired, Paula.
Oh, man.
It's our Dirty Laundry for this week.
That show, that guy, at least he keeps us laughing.
That's our Dirty Laundry for this week. Another one next week. I'll just... whoever steps up to the plate will be our next
There's always
victim.
somebody doing something that they wished rather not got out.
Well, Ronnie, we've come to the end of another great show, and I want to thank you for being a part of it with me. And
yeah, I love being here, man.
Next week, our Independence Day show, and we'll be telling you more. In the meantime, make sure you log on for the very latest and breaking news, partsinthesum.com. It's brand new. Check it out, and we appreciate you being here with us. For those in the studio audience and those listening from around the world, we want to hear from you. Give us a comment.
Yeah. Tell you what, man. You make sure that she doesn't follow me, and I'm going to slip out of the back.
All right. So, Ronnie, like we do every week, you have a good one.
I'll try.
Thanks for listening to Parts in the Sum of the Whole. Be sure to follow our page all week long for the latest news from all over the world. Items discussed in the show do not specifically reflect the views of our source networks and media partners. Our weekly podcast is produced by Panman Media Studios. Visit our website, www.partsinthesum.com. Copyright 2013. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Thomas Jefferson.